You've been known to walk out of interviews, especially if you feel the questions are unfair.
I mean, am I living in a total lunatic asylum? I'm the height of my intellectual powers. It's not very high, I'll admit.
He referred to you as a very, very strange cat.
I would answer that question. I am in a state of shock. People keep voting for me for 50 years. They didn't vote for him very long. And that's where I found out politicians are liars. I get a deadly taipan snake and I can't shoot it.
If we were to organise it, would you fight Tony Abbott?
This podcast is brought to you by Federal Ammunition. What's your premium moment? Hunters, farmers, sporting shooters. It's time to set your sights. It's time to unload on the podcast made for Aussie shooters with Brad.
For a lesser man, this would be a challenge.
Matt.
Quite frankly, I'm going to win this.
And Keith.
I am pretty much the rabbit-proof fence.
It's the NIOA Unloaded Podcast.
Today on the NIOA Unloaded Podcast, we are joined by one of Australia's most colourful and outspoken political figures, the Honourable Bob Katter MP. A man who's been in politics longer than some of our listeners have been alive. Bob has served at both state and federal levels for over 50 years, first in the Queensland Parliament and now as the long-standing member for Kennedy. Bob, welcome to the NIOA Unloaded Podcast.
You know, I was the most powerful man in Queensland. I was running the show in 1990 when the government fell. But a lot of nasty people said that was why it fell.
And we're underway. It's fantastic. So, Bob, you've just come down from the north, mate, in flood recovery.
Very much so. We had 500,000 people trapped on that narrow coastline, 500-foot mountains on one side and 25 kilometres away, the Pacific Ocean.
And, Bob, you've actually got a really long tradition of being involved with government here in Australia. I mean, born in 1945 in Cloncurry, Queensland. Your family's got deep roots in Australia with your father, Bob Katter Sr., yourself serving.
He was Minister for the Army, federal government, my father.
So, how did he sort of get into that? Like, how did he go down that route?
Both sides of my family came out in the gold rushes and we got very rich very fast, which was pretty easy in the goldfields, you know. And Charters Towers was the biggest city in Queensland, gold rush city, bigger than Brisbane. They wouldn't build a school in Charters Towers, even though it was about 25,000 people at that stage. So my great-granddad, he built the school out of his own money. But being who he was, he built a Catholic school. There's one sure way of getting a state school built in those days. It was the only school in town was a Catholic school. And everyone was killing themselves laughing because they knew it had the double effect, A, of providing the Catholics with a jump on the others, and B, forcing the government, because of their hatred of Catholics, to build a state school. But from that point forth, we always had a position of power and leadership. You know? Yeah.
And so, how did you get into the game, Bob?
I didn't, have any interest in politics. I jumped university before I finished the course, and I held some sort of record to say 6 years at university and leave without a degree. So it's actually hard to do.
Did you have a good
But I managed it. So you wasted all. Like, bloody hell, I wasted those years. Chased every Sheila in Brisbane and played serious rugby league. And, I didn't waste it, no way. Anyway, but I had no interest in politics. I had a great love of mining and, I was prospecting. And I was home. That's what I wanted to be. That's what I wanted to do. And I fell in with an old black fella who had worked all the mines as a young kid, but he had an incredible memory. And we were able to go and, find the old mines and take them up again and start working them. And we didn't make a big quid. I think it was equivalent of about 6 motor cars in those days. And, Les made a few quid, my partner out of it, a few motor cars as well. But people see me in a big hat and they think, I'm a cattleman. And I've had cattle all my life, but I'm most certainly not a cattleman, But when Whitlam got elected, I just, anti-Whitlam
Yeah, right.
And I wasn't Robinson Crusoe. I think there was something like 23 members elected that had no interest in politics until Whitlam came along.
And they got into
suddenly it was, a battle to the death, and Bajocki Peterson was leading the fight against Whitlam. And so we arrive at where we are today.
But that was with Keating. Like was he the instigator of, look, we're going to move everything, all manufacturing over to China. We're going to move. Was he the instigator of that?
Absolutely. All manufacturing has left this country. In the 80s, before that critical 1992 year of change, 62% of the motor cars in Australia were Australian made. 97% of our petrol was created in Australia. We dug it out of the ground or gushed it, pumped it out of the ground and refined it here in Australia. All of our petrol, 62% of our motor vehicles. Of course, I don't have to tell you, all motor vehicles are imported, and 97% of our petrol is imported. That costs Australia over $110 billion a year. Now, our total exports are $500 billion a year. And in two items, they wiped out $100 billion of income for our country.
Where do you stand on the coal debate, the renewables, nuclear?
Yeah, it's sort of funny, because I'm the most anti-climate change person in Australia, not in Parliament, but in Australia. But having said that, you can see the CO2 is travelling like that, and then it starts to go like that, and then it just goes vertically. And increasing at an increasing rate, and I'm not going to go into all the chemistry of it, which I am familiar with, but if it was increasing, I wouldn't be worried. But increasing at an increasing rate. So, I didn't do it for that purpose, but I put the first standalone solar system in Australia in the Torres Straits in 1983. But I didn't do it to save the planet of climate change or anything, but it was the most efficient way to deliver electricity in remote situations. The other aspect too is you're going to close down the coal industry. Well, in Queensland, both Labor and Liberal parties have agreed to the 2034 agreement, which is a reduction of 72% in emissions, which means the closure of the coal industry. Now, that is happening now, that massive tax. No one's going to open a new coal mine. They have effectively launched on a policy of abolishing the coal industry in Queensland. Guess who's the biggest employer? People in Queensland. Guess where the most highly paid jobs are in Queensland? Guess where the government's income comes from? It ain't going to be there.
But I think one of the areas that people, I think, everyday Australian struggles with is that, you look at these counterparts over in China, other places like that, it is full throttle. They're building more coal stations.
If you raise the issue of climate change in China, I think you'd be spending a lot of time in jail.
But look, Bob,
if you were lucky.
Let's talk about your party, the Katters Australian Party, the Australia Party. There's a lot of different things that you want to sort of champion, which, a lot of the major parties, they don't even want to talk about. I live in a suburb where we recently had a spate of juvenile crime, which actually resulted in the death of a mother through a stabbing. And it was just horrific that it was so close in our area. But one of the things that you're actually championing is castle law. Could you just maybe just describe, first of all, to the listeners what castle law is and what the ramifications of it are?
Castle law is, Englishman's home is his castle. And Coke, CJ, Chief Justice in England, has said that an Englishman's home is his castle. His house may be windows that are broken, doors that flap in the storm. Be it ever so humble, the King of England himself cannot set foot upon the portals without legal process. It's not really about guns. It's about personal freedoms that I have the control over my life. I do not have to rely upon the government to provide me with the most basic of rights, the right to defend myself. And the Canute family, a very famous family in North Queensland, but old Kenny used to say, what, I get a deadly taipan snake in my house and I can't shoot it. Are we living in Australia? And that is a good call. You know, a snake can be very hard to find. You'll see it and then you won't see it. And then you've got to find it. And, you know, it's not a lot of fun starting to pull shoes out, you know, looking for a bloody taipan snake. But even if you find it, what are you going to do? What, grab it by the neck, are you? You know, I mean, but there are people that in any context in human history, and I'm a published historian, so I can speak with authority, for 3 million years that we've been humans, there is no precedent for people that have power preventing other people from protecting themselves. Ordinary elementary protection. You put the life of a crocodile over the life of a human being. You put the life of a deadly snake over the life of a human being. So I'll tell you what you are, mate. I know why you're defending snakes, because you're one of them. Whenever intelligent people have sat down and written a constitution for their country, they put in, whether it's Thomas Jefferson or Montesquieu in the French Revolution, Magna Carta, whenever, you know, the finest intellects in human history have sat down to write a constitution, they have always written in the right to bear arms. You have the right to protect yourself. And John F. Kennedy's famous quote, and when he had all the winners of the Nobel Prize for dinner at the White House, he said, this is the greatest agglomeration of intellect, except when Thomas Jefferson dined alone. You know, and there was no doubt that Thomas Jefferson wrote, you know, the Declaration of Independence. All people are born free and equal and have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, Bob, you know, all full disclosure, because everyone knows, and usually when you hear that, you know, you're coming up on the TV or something like that, they say Bob Gatter, who's father-in-law of Rob NIOA, our boss.
Well, I think NIOA married my daughter because I was the strongest gunman in Australia. I think it was the other way around. You know, I didn't change my ideas because Rob NIOA.
You've always been outspoken around the duopoly of Coles and Woolworths. Just explain to the listeners why that is such an issue and why that needs to be resolved.
I represent one of the biggest potato growing areas in Australia. And my farmers, the last time I looked, were getting 39 cents a kilo, and they were being sold in Woolworths and Coles for $4, between 39 cents and $4.50. You know, 400% markup
who's getting
on a
that money?
potato.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue, you know, that if it was bananas, will they go bad, you know, or something like that. But
potatoes.
not a potato doesn't go bad. You know, sit on the shelf for months. And there's no cleaning or washing or processing of them. They just, run under a spray to get the dirt off them, and that's it. But it's completely unconscionable, and that's the most staple of diet is the potato. And that they can be allowed to get away with this, to me, is absolutely appalling. I just absolutely cannot believe that I've got this far without smashing someone.
We'll get there.
And I got pretty close on occasions, but I'm sort of feeling bad about myself that I haven't. So, and I'm still capable of doing it, I can assure you of that.
Well, let me ask you, you famously challenged Tony Abbott to a fight in 2013, if I'm not mistaken, after Abbott referred to you as a very, very strange cat. You claimed that you're ready to go right now.
Well, you know, people keep voting for me for 50 years. They didn't vote for him very long. They didn't even vote for him in his own electorate.
Oh, that's hilarious. Look, Bob, you've been in politics for
I can honestly say that man never spoke a civil word to me. Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Look, you've been in politics for decades. What does motivate you to keep you going? Seriously, I mean, like most people would want to retire by now. Like what motivates you?
Those people in the First Australian communities, my brother cousins, and I'm related to Stacks from Madoomadgee and that, and Murray from the Curry, I identify very strongly. But my people are dying in mass proportions. So, I mean, my sense of rage, and look, whose responsibility is that this situation prevails? Well, look in the mirror, Katter. You're the person who knows most about it. You've been able to achieve extraordinary results, but we just got the inland road completed. So now we've cut 1,800 kilometres off the round trip for the biggest fruit and vegetable growing area in Australia, far north Queensland. And also the other biggest fruit and vegetable growing area is Victoria. Russell Lethbridge, just a cow-cocky, in the middle of nowhere. But Russell had this great dream of the great inland highway. And yeah, right, Russell. I have pipe dreams too, But all right, I'll ask for the money. And it was Albanese actually gave me the money. I nearly died of shock. When he said yes. And it was 28 million. And of course, the state government has to match it. Yeah. So it was 56 million. Excuse my language. Well, bugger me. Yeah. How about that? Now, but there again, if I walk away, there's no tunnel. If I stay there, I'll get the tunnel. And somewhere in the next 6 years, I'll get the tunnel. I'm standing in the trenches with my rifle, firing my rifle away. And, I'm just going to shoulder my rifle and walk off, am I? Yeah. For the other poor bastards to die. No, I can't do that. And also, I always say, I'm at the height of my intellectual powers. Well, it's not very high, I'll admit. It's the highest I've been. So, I've got no right to walk away from the battle. Yeah, let's face it, I love a fight,
Yeah, never back down.
Look at my background. It's, but, I loved rugby league, because you punch bastards' lights out, None of this playing tiggy with a football like they said to me, what do you think about having this woman, playing AFL, the statue, out in front of the MCG? And I said, well, I can't understand the furor about it. I mean, everyone that plays AFL are girls, aren't they?
Oh, I look forward to your emails on that one. So, Bob, you were talking earlier before about standing in the trenches with your rifle. We actually got to take Bob Katter down to the range, didn't we, Brad?
We did, down 60-second challenge time.
The celebrity 60-second challenge. So let's head down there and see how he went.
Well, here we are. I tell you what, boys, I've been pretty excited waiting for this one. We've got Mr. Bob Katter, Honourable Bob Katter MP, for the 60-second challenge. Now, Brad, what are we using?
We are using the Springfield 2020 A-grade select walnut stock.
And Keithy, what's the ammunition we're using?
We're running a Federal high-velocity match.
All right, so the question is this. Bob, are you ready for the 60-second challenge?
I am always ready.
Here we go. Go. That's one. That's 10 seconds.
Missed.
That's 15 seconds. That's 20 seconds. 30 seconds. It's looking all right. That's 40 seconds. That's 50 seconds.
Lost it. It's
Got
gone.
away from you on the last round, I think, Bob.
There it is.
Time.
Well shot, mate.
Well done. That's pretty good, Bob.
No, it's not. That should be enough. Right there.
Well, to be honest, I still think that one beats Brad.
I think Bob is first in the freehand category.
Yes.
Rather than the rest, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Well, here we are, Bob. We've got the target back. Keithy in the range has he's got the calipers out and he's measured it up, hasn't he? So,
Yes.
Brad, what do we got there, mate?
I can't read. Oh, there we are. 74.9 mil.
All right, now, look, I've got to say, Bob was a little bit more unconventional in the way he shot. Most of all our guys have used the bench rest.
That's right.
Bob was almost offhand with a lot of these
He
shots.
was. He's first in the offhand category. Yeah.
And what did you say about using a scope, Bob?
Where I come from, only girls use scopes. The other is because we can't afford to buy them.
But I tell you what, that is not a shabby offhand.
Yeah.
But Bob, well done on that. I was pretty impressed by that. Just off the hand, that was pretty good, wasn't it?
It was very good shooting, yeah.
When I was a kid, other kids, play games and all that sort of thing. I'd sit in the backyard with my beloved air rifle, and shoot pegs. They were wood pegs off the line, and mother come out and throw them on. But that's how I amused myself. I got 6 top-knot pigeons before breakfast. One morning, got up at 4:15, 4:45. And I wasn't being an older boy that morning, so I brought them back in, and my mother said, "Oh, these poor little birds." "Oh, yeah, Mum. You don't cry about the poor little piggies or the poor little moo cows." "Oh, yeah, but my birds, we cry about them." Yeah.
Actually, pigeon's not a bad eating there. Like
I have had it. I'm not a fan.
I don't mind it, especially wood pigeon. That's pretty good.
You were talking there, Bob. For everybody out there listening, tell everybody what your first firearm was.
This is a good story, actually. My dad, we had clothing stores, but he, got in some rifles, right? And one of them was a Diana air rifle.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked at that and I fell in love. I love my pointer dog, but I loved that air rifle. And my dad said, "All right, if you work for 2 months every Saturday in the shop, you get that rifle." And that's where I found out that politicians are liars. Because 6 months later, I was still looking hungry at that rifle, still having to do Saturday morning work. I still hadn't got that air rifle, but I got it, And it has, those engineers in Britain, it's such a tragedy that country doesn't produce anything anymore. But those great engineers, it's compressed air. It's not like a 22 or a 3 or whatever. It's compressed air. The tolerances are so tight, you can't let any air escape. And it is 72 years old, that rifle. And 2 weeks ago, it gave up the ghost.
Oh, you're kidding.
But my wife said that NIOA Trading can get it repaired.
I was going to say, because we look after Dana, it's probably a warranty call.
I'll speak to Marcus in Germany, just see where we end up.
But I would never break the law. But let's just say the toad population dies of a terrible disease called lead poisoning.
Sure.
But look, if we get, this is what I want, and we will get the balance of power. The KP will get the balance of power. And, there's a lot of Australians, endemic in our, is to fight for the underdog. I mean, we were all underdogs that came into Australia. Very funny altercation between Murrindoo and the Mayor of Burketown. Ernie Camp is a lovely bloke. But Murrindoo was, saying what he usually says, you come here and took all this land off and everything like that. And Ernie speaks a bit like, sort of like half blackfella talk and half Gulf country talk. And Ernie said, Murrindoo, you say, you never wanted to come here. You got to remember that it wasn't our idea to come here. Everyone was killing themselves, including Murrindoo, but it was the fact of the matter, it was true. That's right. The fact of the matter was true. There were 3 million Australians here when they found gold, 3.5 million Australians here. I think that's right, when they found gold. And almost all of them had a convict or a blackfellow in the family tree, almost all of them, one or the other category. But it was such a funny, call. And as I say, Murrindoo couldn't stop laughing himself.
So, Bob, you are, I believe the second longest serving
Member of Parliament.
You're second,
state or federal.
Okay, so you're 50 years. I think 50 years this year.
I have 50 years.
Yeah. You're pretty much known as, what we want to say, the godfather or the father of politics almost here in Australia. Look, what would you say to younger politicians coming through? What have you seen over the years when you first started 50 years ago to what you're seeing now? How has it changed? What are the attitudes like now as to what it was back then?
I have difficulty coping with this. In the cabinet room that I served in, the Jockey Peterson cabinet room, Jockey Peterson slept in a shed for 8 straight years. When he went into Parliament, he was almost as big as Thies contracting. He was never a farmer, he was a contractor. Machinery all over the bloody state of Queensland. And he pioneered a whole lot of things in contracting. So he was a first-class performer. Bill Gunn had 2 butcher shops. He was a butcher and, 3 little cattle spreads, little tiny outfits. And next bloke along set up his own real estate company. And 13 of the cabinet ministers I served with when I was in state parliament had cut cane by hand as young men. Now, go around the table now, none of them. I worked in the mines, as an unskilled labourer, everyone there had dirt under their fingernails, and wore hobnail boots at some stage of their lives. They're not, this is a very sad thing to say, but they've never worked in their lives. The head of the coal mining union's never been near a coal mine in his entire life. He's actually a greenie. How do you get head of the coal miners union when you're a greenie? Well, I don't know. And every day of my life I say, what happened?
Bob, you've been very outspoken about national service and getting guns into the hands of children while they're at school. Can you embellish on that a little bit?
Yeah, I had a bit of a down period, hadn't got much publicity for a while, hadn't been in the national dailies, hadn't got dressed up as pigs or something. But anyway, and so I decided to, flare things up a bit, throw a few bombs around, see what happens. And I said that every boy in Australia, when he turns 13 at school, gets a combat rifle and is taught how to use it, and it becomes his rifle. It is kept in the school armoury and later on in the town armoury. And I thought, boy, this will set them on fire. No, everyone agreed with me. I didn't give one single attack, on the internet. It was like 80 to 1 in favour of what we said. Even the one was sort of, well, I don't know, but it was sort of funny. But, when you actually got down to it, people were, if you want to generalise, pro-gun, not anti-gun.
No.
If I was the boss of Australia, there would be a missile wall. Ever since man has been man, he puts a palisade around, whether it's a sort of ring of fire to protect him,
an iron dome,
fire in the front of the cave, or an iron dome or a fortress wall. You don't have full-time. You have people, hey, it's good fun to go out for a month on a boat and get away from your wife, and
hello to Bob's wife who's listening at the moment.
And when they gave the 13th time they allocated the submarine contract, 13th. I think it was the 12th or 13th time, they gave it to a French company. And I was speaking to the head of the maritime engineers. They're like, diesel fitters, telling him, give it to the French. I've got the Encyclopedia Britannica. The French have never won a sea battle in their entire history, unless you included Charlemagne's defeat of the Vikings on the Seine River outside Paris. I don't know whether that's naval battle, and Tony Sneeze said, Charlemagne was German. And he was. He came from Alsace, not Lorraine. And then, there were about 20 blokes, and they're all pissing themselves. But the truth was he was right. But see, the French dragged us into the First World War, then stopped fighting. They dragged us into the Second World War and changed sides. Then they dragged us into the Vietnam War and changed sides. These are wonderful people. You can really rely upon them. Give me a bloody break. And we award a contract to a foreign corporation from bloody France. And like I say, it could be worse, could be China, but then we awarded the army boots to China. And, this sounds unbelievable. I hate saying it because I'm sure no one believes me. But they awarded the army boots contract to China. See, I think that the most beautiful boots in the world are steel blues, you know. Well, instead of giving it to the Australian best boot manufacturers in the world, they give it to China. In the Anzac Day March the next year, 2,000 soles of boots were on the street.
Jeez.
And I'm telling the bloke who's in charge of the catapult party, I said, was that right that they lost all those soles off their boots this morning? And he picked up his shoe. This is in Charters Tale. She was the catapult party, you know. He's a sergeant. He picked up his shoes. There's no soles on them. You know, I mean, but...
Well, you've got to pay extra for the ones where the soles stay on. So, they're more. They cost more.
I mean, you go to China and you give your submarine contract to the French. I mean, am I living in a total lunatic asylum? And they give the artillery contract to the French. I mean, I just, it's all unbelievable to me.
So, Bob, you're having dinner with 3 legendary Australians. Who are they?
If I had my choice, if you walk into my office, there's a big picture of Red Ted Theodore, easily the most important person in Australian history. Ernest Henry, who founded 4 towns in my homeland, and the famous historian, Tyranny of Distance, he took a spear in the back and out the front, broke it off and rode 3 days ride back into Cloncurry with the spear through it, you know, amongst many other such escapades. And he was the one, he's a very devout Christian, and he was the one that really was responsible for stopping the mass murder that was taking place out there. No, probably Lady Pearl Logan, even though she was a bit of a surrogate mother to me. My mother died when I was in my early 20s. And, I think she was the most important person of the last century. And Dame Mary Gilmore could, have aspirations there. She's on a $10 note. She was very friendly with the bloke underneath her on the $10 note.
Look out, you've heard it here first. The scandals are aplenty.
Fidelity is the monetary policy.
We got to run this podcast past legal.
Third one, Lady Pearl Logan died a number of years ago now, but we only have a quality of education in Australia as a result of her. I spent half my life, the top part of the electorate. I lived with the Logans, a bit of a surrogate mother to me. So they'd be the 3.
Yeah. So, Bob, true or false? While often making headlines for your bold statements, you've been known to walk out of interviews, especially if you feel the questions are unfair.
No. I can't remember what touched it off, but it was over the homosexual thing, And so I had everyone in Australia wanted to interview me, And look, I've got, my opinion about that, but my life is not centred around that.
Sure.
And I said, well, I'm not doing any more interviews on that. That's it, right? So a ladies' thing that they had on the ABC.
They sandbagged you.
They said that, no, they would not raise that issue. Well, of course, the minute I sat down, they raised that issue. So I pulled out my history of Australia, moderate bestseller, if I say so myself. And I said, everyone read this book. It's the best history of Australia you'd ever read, which I believe it is, actually. And so I'm going to read that because these people were told that I'm not discussing that. So they can have their discussion about that, and I'll just read my book here. Thank you very much for watching, And this went on for 21 minutes. I sat there reading my book, and they went asking questions that I was supposed to finish. And on another occasion, I said, well, I told you I'm not going to talk about that. So why don't you, I'm just going to take this over here and I'll put it at the gum tree, and you can have the interview at the gum tree. I walked off. Yeah.
So, Bob, we're going to have to start wrapping things up. I've got a couple of quick questions. I don't want you to expand on these. I just want you to give me the quickest answer possible. All right. So
I've never been known to do that. I'll give it a shot.
We're going to give it a try. All right. Favourite country song?
I don't know. Three Rivers Hotel leaps to my mind. It's the one I sing most, I suppose.
All right, that's good. That's all good. Rugby union, rugby league.
I'm in a state of shock. I would answer that question. I am in a state of shock. That moronic upper-class game compared with the greatest game in
on earth
in world history.
Correct.
You know, I mean,
I think I know your answer to this one.
All right.
But who's your favourite NRL team?
we've lost, Valentine Holmes.
Come on, you got to do this quick. Come on.
They scored half our points last year and they're both gone. So I'm a little bit worried about this shit.
So the Cowboys.
Yeah.
and finally, if we were to organise it, would you fight Tony Abbott?
That's a bit unfair. I'd have to tie one hand behind my back and, yeah.
All right, Bob, look, to wrap it up, I don't want to wrap this up. I'm going to let you wrap this up because we do have an election coming up. At the time of this podcast, I should say, it hasn't been announced yet. You've got your chance to talk about what the Katter Party stands for and the main pillars that you've got on. You've got a minute.
I got this down to work, wealth and worth. We are there to provide work for our people where they can earn an income and stand on their own 2 feet, and raise a family. It's just work. Wealth, it's not driving a Mercedes-Benz motor car, but it's having maybe a bit of acreage, with gum trees in the back and a kangaroo jumping around, I don't know. But a little bit of space around you and it's your own home, and on that home, you are the king. And that's what I mean when I add worth to that. It's got to have worth. It's got to be a worthwhile thing to do.
So there you have it, folks. The Honourable Mr. Bob Katter MP. Bob, we really appreciate you.
Oh, sorry, one thing.
Whoop, look out.
There's something wrong in the education system. And I truly believe, without any apologies to anyone, that those Christian principles of, look, you've got a responsibility to work, you've got a responsibility to look after your fellow Australians, and you've got a responsibility to make the world a better place. That should be in the education system.
And on that note, Mr. Bob Katter, thank you for being on the NIOA Unloaded Podcast.